the version of that person that they are now, that's like the best. That's where that's as good as it's going to get,
Yeah.
right? So over time, it can only get worse. So are you totally happy and thrilled now? But if there's any like cracks in that, like pay attention.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
If you're thinking, boy, he or she's great, but I just wish they were, more committed to their health, more committed to their career development, that they were a little bit more, easygoing and good humored when I make a joke. I wish they were a little bit, maybe down the road, they'll get a little bit more of the thing I want. No, they will either stay the same or get what you perceive to be worse.
If you start using that student words but or maybe as you're starting to describe your relationship with another person, that's probably good indication that you need to reevaluate.
Welcome to the Mindfully Masculine podcast. This is Charles. Today we are closing out our series on the Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins with the final 3 chapters. These chapters focus on relationships, romantic ones in particular. We'll talk about how to let people show you who they are, how to have the commitment conversation without losing your footing, and how to handle breakups in a way that leads to growth instead of more pain. It's a powerful way to wrap up this book, and we'll be pulling out the lessons that matter most for men who want to build healthier, more intentional connections. If you'd like to catch all of our audio and video episodes, check us out at mindfullymasculine.com. Thanks for listening and enjoy the episode.
Good morning, Charles.
Hello again, Dan. How are you?
Well. How's our equipment doing?
It's fine when I don't kick the power plug in on.
All right.
So we're covering the last 3 chapters of the Let Them Theory, 18, 19, and 20. And this focuses on relationships and how to navigate those, particularly romantic relationships. So we're going to get into chapter 18, let them show you who they are. Chapter 19, how to take your relationship to the next level. And chapter 20, how every ending is a beautiful beginning, which I find that title somewhat cliche and annoying, but
for the last chapter of the book, I feel like
got to move some books some way. And
cute.
So let's start with chapter 18. Let them show you who they are. This one, she builds on some stuff from the last couple of chapters, which is don't try to fix people. Don't try to change people. Certainly don't try to get into a romantic partnership with someone based on the assumption of, they just need a little bit of tweak and I can adjust them to be the partner I need them to be.
Yeah, I liked one of her quotes, which was, the purpose of dating isn't to find the one, it's to find yourself.
Yeah, I like that too. And really understanding what it is that you need and how you love. And yeah, that should be the goal. And seeing how, who you want to be and who you really are is reflected in your relationship with another person.
Yeah, I feel like I ended up in that state where I figured out over way too much time trying to find the one, I ended up finding myself. But if I had gone in with that mindset of I'm trying to figure out what I want, it would have made things a lot easier and I would have put a lot less pressure on myself to stick out relationships longer than I should have, or not expressed my needs, wants, and boundaries, right? A lot of stuff that Glover talks about. And he helped me finally get to that point where I realized, hey, I need to figure out what I want in order for me to even stand a chance of finding out somebody who's going to be compatible with me.
Yeah. There was a quote by, I think it was Mark Manson, that said, the only universal effective dating advice is self-improvement. And so, I've got a friend who's in a relationship that she's not satisfied with and she knows she's kind of spinning her heels in this relationship and trying to figure out, how to get out of it and how to feel like she can get out of it. And my advice to her for a long time, and whenever she asks for advice, I'll always give her the same advice, which is get healthier and healthier to the point where the negative aspects of this relationship are no longer attractive to you, or this person's no longer attractive to you. And the only way you can change that is by getting healthier and healthier and replacing bad, unhealthy patterns with good, healthy patterns to the point where you're like, okay, this guy, he doesn't fit into who I am now.
Yeah.
And then you'll naturally transition out of the relationship. But trying to dig your heels in and say, okay, now I'm ready for a breakup this time. And if you're not ready, if your nervous system still wants all the unhealthy things that, you and your partner are creating this relationship, then the breakup's not going to hold, or you'll replace them with somebody else with the same problems.
I think one of the challenges a lot of us run into is that the negative consequences of that relationship don't feel worse than taking on the uncomfortable challenges to improve yourself.
Yeah.
Right. I think, you're still getting enough of those little bits of dopamine, that good times with them, even though it's not what you want in the end. It's a lot easier to swallow that than it is to really like look at yourself and want to make difficult changes, or potentially what we think are difficult changes. And I think we need to kind of reframe that and go, hey, it doesn't need to be difficult. It could just be you going in and doing a hobby somewhere, or, meeting a bunch of people doing the same thing that you're interested in, instead of going out with this dude, on a Friday night. Right. But there's a chance that you might have a good time with him, and you're remembering all those things in the past that happened where you had that one amazing night, and you're hoping that might happen again. But meanwhile, you kind of, like you mentioned in the last time we were talking about, you're kind of wasting your time with somebody who's not the right fit. And there's an opportunity cost because now you're not out there able to meet the person who's a better fit.
Yeah, and one thing to also keep in mind is that sometimes, it's very hard for us when we're in the middle of a relationship to do the good times versus bad times math. Like, okay, well, for the last, month, the bad times have outweighed the good times. Therefore, I will just end the relationship. It's like,
wish it was that easy.
It's not. Yeah. Because the other things about the relationship that your nervous system may have grown to crave, whether that's the familiarity, the chaos, the ups and downs, the emotional highs and low, those kind of override the simple math of good times versus bad times. And sometimes this whole chapter is all about patterns, where it's like you get into these patterns and you should be able to recognize the patterns and trust the patterns, because the only way to really have a good idea of what the future will hold is to look at the patterns of the past.
Right. And as you mentioned before on the conversation that we didn't record, it's like a drug. It's a pattern. It's not just a behavior pattern. There's a physical pattern that we behave, that we engage in, and that becomes tied to our bodies and our nervous system, so that we really are addicted to operating in this way, or very used to operating in this way. So that adds a whole nother layer of challenge when it comes time to trying to break those patterns. It's not just oh yeah, I did a pros and cons list, and it's easy for me to go, all right, yeah, no problem, I'm going to start changing something.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than just your brain going, I should be doing this. It's, wow, yeah, you have to like literally change the way you feel. And that's sometimes extremely difficult when you've had such highs, as you mentioned too, is in that honeymoon period. A lot of times we're establishing really amazing new experiences. Right. You got your best foot forward, even going to the same restaurant you've been to a million times. You're going to that new that same restaurant with somebody who's new.
Right.
That's going to build additional, physical, like neuro pathways and good feelings. And our brain, when we feel good, we want to repeat that. We get cravings to repeat that same thing. Let's do that again over and over and over again. And even if it's not happening, we're thinking, oh, there might be a chance we can get back there.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And us, depending on what else is going on in the mix of brain chemistry that makes you, when you have challenges with things like ADHD, insecure attachment, all these things kind of factor into, you use that honeymoon period to build a benchmark of what relationships should be. And a lot of us, myself included, have difficulty making the move from that honeymoon period to just the day in, day out of this is what I'm like, this is what this other person is like, and are the non-hormone fueled manic versions of us people that can enjoy a healthy relationship together.
Yeah. And I know a lot of times we'll make excuses as to why they're behaving this way now and not the way they were in the honeymoon period. Like, well, this other person, they just got a new job, so they're a little bit more stressed. Or they just had this huge thing happen in their life. And so, they're not sleeping as well, so they're a little crankier. And before we know it, this is just the way they operate. And there's always going to be something that comes up in life that's going to be stressful. How do they handle that stress? Right. And so there's always going to be something.
And that's why it's a good idea not to, make any big decisions and big commitments during that honeymoon phase, because, people are at the beginning of the relationship, people are going to be as engaged, exciting, attractive as they're ever going to be. Attractive simply is a function of time, right? The clock's not running backwards for some of us and forwards for others. It's running forwards for all of us. And so, and that's why even the most valuable time to be on the lookout for those red flags is in the time where you're least likely to be on the lookout for the red flags. during that honeymoon phase, because if there are patterns and behaviors that you're seeing during the honeymoon phase that you're like, I'm a little uncomfortable. Maybe he or she will get that together, so that we can be together forever. It's like, no, this is, it's like when the sales guy won't return your call in the pre-sales cycle.
Yeah.
They're certainly not going to get better at returning your call after you bought the product.
Right. Yeah.
They're going to get worse.
Absolutely. I mean, quick example here. I brought my car to a new repair place this last week, and just for like an oil change, and like the middle console button wasn't working, and I was like, hey, can you just take a look at that? I didn't know anything about this mechanic. They got good ratings on Google. They basically quoted me $900 to replace the middle console. Well, if some cars, they've got a valet switch that actually gauges the button on the middle console as well as the trunk. I was rummaging around in the glove box before that and realized after the fact that I had engaged this valet switch, and it basically stopped it from opening. As soon as I clicked the valet switch, boom, it opened, no problem. So either I left the review, I was just like, either they don't know, right? They don't know the craft, or they were trying to take advantage of me. But the point is, I'm never going to go back there again. Right. So that's the thing. It's like, I've had those first dates where they've done basically the same thing, where they made a crappy comment about a fat person one time. And I was just like, oh, they were just kind of joking around. But at the time I was a little uncomfortable. I'm like, I can't tell if they're fully joking or they're actually like serious. It was just like, oh, look at that fat. And I was just like, oh my God, like at the time. But then everything else was really good. And I kind of let that go. I was attracted and everything. Looking back, I could have saved myself like 2-3 years of a relationship if I had listened and objectively evaluated the situation of reality at that time, and all the hormones and the everything else. I wasn't paying, could see through all of that. Right?
That's interesting. That brings in another quote from the chapter that I think we can use in a couple ways. The idea of, if they're into you, you'll know, and if they're not, you'll be confused. I would also say, if they're compatible, you'll know, and if they're not compatible, you'll be having a lot of conversations with yourself why they might be compatible.
That's a great way to extrapolate that.
Yeah,
100%. Absolutely. That's even more important to realize as you're going on dates is, if you need to work to figure out whether they're compatible or not, in your own head,
they're having conversations with yourself
or with a friend or anybody else, and you're asking questions versus going in like, oh my God, I can't believe how compatible we are.
Right.
I mean, that's still no guarantee at that point, right?
Right.
That's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah. It's and especially look for the way that people talk about and treat other people. Like if they're making cracks about somebody being overweight, if they're being rude to servers, if they're showing you those things, then if it's something you don't know because you don't care and it's not a problem for you and you're the same way, then you can both be pieces of shit together.
Yeah.
But if you're a person where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she talked that way to the valet that we were giving the car keys to, and she's not only talking that way to that one valet.
Correct. And another way to look at it is, if you were on a date with this person and you overheard the couple next to you, one of those people, say something like that, how would you feel about that?
Right. I want to be the girl I'm sitting across. I want her to be someone that I could share a glance with and be like, God, can you get a load of those people? And she's like, I can't believe what I just heard. You don't want to be sitting across from the person that's saying those things so that the couple next to you is bonding over how terrible she is.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And looking back, it's just like, oh my God, you blind mother. Like, I can't believe you just swept that under the rug.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because she was pretty or exciting or
I hadn't had a date in God knows how long at that point. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, all right, I'm letting it all go. Right.
Yeah, so I felt that this chapter 18 was mostly targeted, and tell me if you disagree, mostly targeted to women who are in relationships that they're not feeling satisfied with.
Yeah.
And which is okay, Mel gets to pick whatever audience for whatever section of the book she feels like it, but I did feel, and maybe, maybe guys have had the same experience and other guys would read this book and feel like, oh, I feel like she's talking to me. I didn't feel like that because, typically, I think in our society, men can often be the kind of gatekeepers on commitment. And so most of the time that somebody is complaining that somebody is not as committed as they would like or not as invested, it's usually, at least in heterosexual relationships, it's usually the woman complaining about the man. I think that's a function of both biology and culture. And so I did feel like the main thrust or the main benefit of this chapter would be like, hey ladies, if you're in this relationship and he's not giving you what you want or what you need in the way of commitment or investment or whatever, here are some of the things you can do about that are within your control. Like, here's how you can recognize what's not in your control from what is in your control. And once you recognize what is in your control, here's how you can act in a way to find out if this is going to work or not. And
100%.
And a big part of that was the Matthew Hussey conversation about when you want a commitment at a level that you don't currently have, here's how you sit your partner down and ask for it.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of keeping it you focused of, here's how I feel, here's what I want, here are the things I value. Now the ball's in your court. Are you on board with this, or do I need to keep looking, essentially? Yep. Not in an ultimatum way, but just as these are the values that I base my dating life around, and I need somebody that is on the same page with those values, and the actions you take in committing to me are going to determine whether you've got a place in my dating life or not.
Yeah, and she mentions this. I think the most important part is going into this conversation with the proper intention. It's not to get what you want. It's not to express disappointment in the fact that you're not getting what you want. It's to seek clarification.
Right. It can't be the number one. Attaining them is not the number one goal of this conversation. Attaining clarity is the number one goal of the conversation.
I feel like if we do, if you're trying to attain them,
you'll say what
subconsciously,
believe what you have to.
Subconsciously, right? You're going to try to make them feel guilty. You might get more upset than you need to be, and that might indirectly make them feel guilty. And then they could be giving you an inaccurate response because they don't want you to feel bad. Part of that was, hey, I really enjoyed what we've had, but at this point, I know myself, I want a commitment, and I only want to invest my time and energy in somebody who's looking for the same thing. And if you don't, that's totally fine, but I just want to let you know that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm at my decision point.
Right. And you're just really looking for information. I mean, think about it. You're going on Google, you're asking ChatGPT, I just need some clarification here.
Right.
Try to go in without as you're trying to express emotions, because then you want to find out reality is from that other person, and you want to make it as easy as possible for the other person to feel like they can give you that truth without feeling like there's going to be consequences if they don't give you what you want.
Yeah. Here's the thing I took away from that conversation. There's always going to be a dynamic in a relationship of power, of attraction, of status. I mean, your relationship shouldn't be all about those things, but they are going to be present. And when I go to you and say, I want a commitment from you, I want, it's very easy to kind of, the result of that could be putting one person on a pedestal and bringing yourself down here. Like, I'm down here begging you to be with me and commit to me. Will you please do it?
That's one way.
Yep. Where, I mean, I think that's the default. Whenever one person initiates I want a commitment conversation.
Yeah.
It is kind of, I'm down here, you're up here, I'm asking you to give me something that I need. Following the model that she describes in this chapter that Matthew Hussey's girlfriend came to him with, it takes that and puts you both on the exact same level, which is why it's so valuable and so effective.
Right. And as you said, because you're saying you're using I. So it's like, I value my time and energy. And at this point, if I'm going to continue to invest in it, in this relationship, I want to do that with somebody who's on the same page. And I think that is really kind of what brings you up to that same level, because you're not saying I'm incomplete without you, I need this. It's not a need anymore. It's a want at this point, right? And it might be a need in terms of this is you're now saying, it's a need in that if I'm going to continue to give my time and energy, this is what it's valued.
That works for me. And whether or not you participate in that life is going to be you answer, how we resolve this conversation. And again, because some of it could be if you go into this conversation the way many of us often do, where you're down here and they're up here on this pedestal and you're asking them to give you something that you need from them, the very nature of that conversation makes the other person think, if they're coming to me asking like this, maybe I'm too special to say yes to a commitment with them.
Could be. Yeah.
And so, I think it's one of the most essential takeaways from this book is framing that commitment conversation in a way where you're going into it as an equal party saying, I enjoy you, I appreciate you, but what I require is this kind of clarity in my relationships. And now it's your turn to say where you where you fit in, where you think you fit into that.
Yeah, I think that kind of rolls up into a lot of what I'm taking out of this book, which is the let me part is the part where you learn to value yourself, right?
Right.
So it's the let them, so you can actually let go of that emotional attachment to the situation. The let me then is I'm taking power, I'm taking control, I'm making a decision. And by doing that, you are saying that you are valuable enough to make those decisions. You're valuable enough. Yeah. Basically make those decisions.
Yeah. You have to, a life that works for you has to be the priority over and above any one other person, you know? And so if you find yourself in a situation where, hey, this isn't working for me, then, you know, you owe it to yourself to get yourself out of that situation.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're like most of us, if you're practicing monogamy and you want to have one partner that you're dedicated to and is dedicated to you, every day you spend with the wrong partner is a day that you're not spending with the right partner. And not there's a, you know, a one person out there that, but yeah, anytime you're spending with somebody that doesn't match your values is a time that you're robbing yourself of someone who does.
And as you said, is you know, by expressing what your needs are, you're not just doing yourself a favor, you're doing the other person a favor too, right? Because if you then go into this relationship because you guilted that person into going, oh, well, you know, because you came upset and you're like, I need you to commit to me. And then I've been on the other end of that. And I've been like, okay, yeah, let's do this, because there's a little bit of good there and I don't want her to be upset. But the bottom line is I knew that person was wrong for me and I shouldn't have done that. But if you go into the conversation and you say, or you continue in a relationship where you aren't 100% getting in return what you are investing in, you're going to get resentful. Then you're not going to bring your best self and you're going to sabotage your own relationship, that the one that you thought you wanted, because you were too scared to actually have that conversation at the beginning and go, this is where my standards are. And you know, I need someone to match that. So don't go in there and try to manipulate someone into getting what you want, because you're not going to be happy in the end anyway. You're doing yourself a disservice.
You get if you guilt or manipulate somebody into a commitment they don't want to make, then you're getting the version of them that you don't want to have.
Or you've got this underlying weird arrogance that you think you can change them, right? Like, oh, they're not exactly what I want, but we'll figure it out. I'll figure out how to change them. Like, in a weird way, that's awfully arrogant, don't you think?
Yeah, it certainly is. And and that's one of the things that insecurely attached codependent people certainly struggle with is, you know, I need to justify their presence in my life even though they're not right for me. So I'll believe that if I just, you know, bear down and white knuckle it hard enough, I'll be able to turn them into what they need to be for me.
Right.
And
yeah.
Never heard of it working.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've told me a few times, you know, you should, the version of that person that they are now, that's like the best, that's where that's as good as it's going to get, right? So over time, it can only get worse. So are you totally happy and thrilled now? But if there's any like cracks in that, like, pay attention. Pay attention.
If you're thinking, you know, boy, he or she is great, but I just wish they were, you know, more committed to their health, more committed to their career development, that they were a little bit more, you know, easygoing and good humored when I make a joke. I wish they were a little bit, maybe down the road, they'll get a little bit more of the thing I want. No, they will either stay the same or get what you perceive to be worse.
If you start using that, the words but or maybe as you're starting to describe your relationship with another person, that's probably good indication that you need to reevaluate.
Breakups, the best case scenario, it's mostly mutual and it still sucks and it still hurts and it's still going to be a rough thing for you to go through. In a worst case scenario, you get what you believe to be blindsided by someone you want to be with who doesn't want to be with you anymore. And in either case, the feelings that you're experiencing, there are no shortcuts to make it better. There are only shortcuts to make it worse.
Right.
Yeah. Where the only thing that any shortcuts you try to take to get through the pain of the heartbreak is usually just going to result in it hurting worse and longer.
Yeah. I mean, she mentions 30 days, no contact. And I know some of the other books have said like 90 days, no contact, or no contact at all, ever.
Part of it depends on what you want. If you're looking to get back together with the person, then some people will say 30 or 90 days of no contact, and then you write them a letter, blah, blah, blah. And I I think the good advice is very clear on that. If someone breaks up with you and you want to get back together with them, you never contact them again. I mean, after, you have settled out the logistics of the breakup, you've gotten your stuff, they've gotten their stuff. If you've done anything like really dramatically inappropriate that you need to apologize for, then you apologize for it. But then the dumper never hears from you ever again for the rest of your life. If they reach out to you, you can choose to respond to them. Yeah, if your goal is to recover from the breakup and possibly get back together with them, you go into no contact as soon as is logically feasible, and you just never reach out to them. You never initiate conversation with them again.
So that sounds like accepting reality.
Correct. On reality's terms.
On reality's terms.
Yes.
Oh, I like that.
And so, yeah, if you're willing to stay broken up with them and realize that the breakup was for the best, then yes, it's possible down the road you could have a friendship with them. But honestly, I mean, I would tread carefully with that, because having a lot of ongoing friendships with exes is going to introduce complication to your new relationships. And so you got to really weigh that to say, oh, is my friendship with this ex, barring you have a business together, you have kids together, you have pets together, stuff like that. You have to deal with those situations as they exist. Without any of those kind of complicating factors, a guy or a gal who's got a string of ex-partners and ex-lovers that they're just friends with, that is going to seem like a red flag to the new person that you might be interested in.
Yeah.
And I think that's reasonable. I mean, if somebody had a lot of close friendships, or even a close friendship with somebody that they were previously romantically involved with, even though they didn't have a business together or kids together, my attitude would be like, okay, you might not be the person for me then.
Right.
If you're still dedicated to this ongoing friendship.
Yeah. And I think the undertones of that is that this other person had this relationship with this other person, and they've generated memories and good times together.
Right.
And so the more times they are spending with that other person, their ex, that there are things that can come up, memories and history and things that generate emotions. And now that's absolutely, it's a risk to your current relationship.
Yeah, I think so. So I would say that yes, down the road, post breakup, there is a chance that you and your ex-partner could be friends again, but you just kind of have to. And I mean, that could even be something that you go into it with, like, hey, I'd like to reestablish a friendship with you, but just so you know, that friendship is going to have to go on hiatus if I get another romantic interest, because I don't think it would be fair to that new partner for me to still be contacting you.
Yeah. And it's funny because, we hear these stories about, most of the time we understand, oh yeah, it's not good if they're really good friends with a lot of their exes. We understand that. But as she talks about, is we always think we're the exception to the rule.
Yes.
So this is going to be different.
Right.
That doesn't really apply to us, because they clearly can handle their exes differently, or this warning label, it doesn't apply to me. And I think we fall into that trap when it comes to relationships here too.
Yeah, I would say the sweet spot is going to be, you want somebody that is willing to speak about their past relationships and their former partners in a way that is, oh, she was crazy, she was insane, she was a bad person. I mean, that's a huge red flag. And I've told younger guys, like, never talk negatively about your former partners, because that says as much or more about how bad of a person you are than it does about her.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize and try to identify your role in those relationships too. You don't need to speak at length about, what a terrible person you think you are, in that last relationship. But I think balancing it out and realize it takes two to tango in that relationship, and there are decisions that you made that probably led to the problems that you had. So take some responsibility and ownership of your, of you in that relationship. It doesn't mean it all falls on you either. But at the same time, if you're saying, oh, this person was crazy, that person was crazy, that person's crazy, what's the common denominator here?
Exactly. And so, yeah, you can also assume that however somebody is speaking about their ex, that's going to be exactly how they speak about you when your relationship is over too.
Or they could be thinking, hey, is he thinking that I'm crazy right now? Even before the relationship is over, you could be sabotaging your existing relationship, because now you've put those thoughts into the other person's mind. So even those things haven't happened.
Wait a second, this guy's dated 4 crazy women in a row, and now he's dating me. He must think I'm crazy.
Exactly. Or they might even question themselves. Is this crazy? What I'm doing now? Now they start questioning themselves. now they're not going to bring their best self to the relationship because they're always feeling like they're scrutinizing themselves even more. So
Yeah. So I would say look for partners
yeah,
that are not still enmeshed with their former partners, but also not just constantly talking crap about their former partners either. Find somebody that's in the middle of those. And
yeah.
I think that maximizes your potential for success.
So I don't know what your experience has been like on dates and getting to know people. Have you run into a lot of people who want to constantly talk about their exes and their previous relationships and things like that? I feel like, and it's like early on in the dates, I feel like that can be dangerous waters to be treading in.
I mean, usually that only happens when there's some unresolved feelings about the person or the breakup. Yeah. If somebody is preoccupied with the negatives or the traumas of their last relationship to the point where they're bringing them up fairly frequently with a new partner, then that probably means that they've got some work they have to do.
Yeah.
And, one of the things, when it comes to moving past a negative or a challenging relationship, whether that's one you had with your parents or with a former partner or whatever, it's like having a cohesive narrative in your own head about understanding, what led to the relationship, why the relationship was negative, what happened, why it happened. That seems to be a big part of being able to move on past it. And so if you haven't, or your partner hasn't figured out why the relationship, what the good and bad parts of it were, why it succeeded, why it failed, why you felt traumatized by it, if that's not something that a person can express to themselves, and I would say at least one other person, whether that's a sponsor in a recovery group or a therapist or, even a best friend and confidant, if you can't express, here's why I got into the relationship, here's what was good at the beginning, here's what went wrong, here's why I still have unresolved feelings. If that's not a story you're ready to tell, you might not be ready to be in another relationship yet.
Yeah, that's a great litmus test for sure.
Yeah. So speaking more about the breakups, some of the practical steps you can take post-breakup is environmental changes, remove reminders, pictures, things that they gave you, or home improvement choices and style choices that they...
Yeah, she even mentions maybe even just changing up your furniture in your bedroom because the chances are you spend a lot of time in there.
Yeah.
And so you just might need to change what that looks like so you can really separate your brain and get yourself physically, your nervous system.
So you feel like you're in a new time period.
Yeah.
The other thing is build support systems, reach out and, sort of rekindle some of those friendships that maybe got neglected during your relationship, activities, hobbies, groups of people that you would associate with. Try to dive back into those things if you can. One of the things I'll disagree with her on is she said to avoid any breakup diets or breakup exercise regimes in an effort to get them back or to make them feel sorry for losing out on the better version of you. No, I say embrace both of those. And I would say don't adopt some kind of a crash diet that's not going to be effective for you in the long run. That's silly under any circumstance. But if the current motivation is I want to get in better shape to get them back, or I want to get in better shape to make them regret losing me, I don't care what your motivation is.
Sometimes that's what you...
Yeah, absolutely.
To get over that hump.
Yeah, post-breakup is a great time to take on a big project like that. And if you form the behavior and the habits and the patterns of being somebody that eats better and works out more, I really don't care what your motivation is.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that and make it work for you. And then the hope is down the road, you'll keep it going. Even if after 11 weeks or a year or whatever, your motivation changes, you've got the habits and the patterns in place and you could just maintain those.
Yeah. I mean, it really starts with our physical bodies and our physical state in terms of the experience that we bring and get out of the world. And so if you can improve that by dropping a few pounds or getting into some healthier habits, then you're going to start to open up other opportunity. Your brain's going to start to function better. You're going to attract other kinds of people to you. So I agree. Sometimes we need to focus on whether that's, intrinsic motivation of, I want to be healthy, but also for myself, but also if it drives you from having a bad breakup or hate, right? So tap into that. Don't live on that hate. But if that little taste, that tinge of hate of something gets you to do something that's positive, then use it. Don't hold on to that and let that be the only way that you can get stuff done. But sometimes more difficult things, those obstacles you want to overcome, they're difficult. You need that fire.
Yeah. And I mean, I think of other things. If you decide, okay, I'm going to volunteer with, the dog shelter or Habitat Humanity, just so she sees me being a great guy. It's like the people whose houses are getting built or the dogs that are going for a walk, they don't care what your motivation is. They're
Right.
benefiting from it anyway. So I say, if those thoughts that society say aren't okay, so you doing things that are good for yourself and good for other people, then go ahead and do them.
Yeah.
I don't care if the guy who's volunteering at the animal shelter is just doing it so that his ex will feel sorry that she dumped him.
Right.
I care that the dogs and cats are benefiting from, clean places and going for walks and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, do these things that benefit yourself and other people for whatever motivation. And then hopefully if you're doing the other things right post breakup, the negative motivations will fall to the wayside and you'll keep positively affecting yourself and the world around you.
Yeah. And you're going to be exposing yourself to multiple positive experiences. Right. Yes. Initially that motivation might be not ideal, might not be that perfect world, that altruistic, right. Which is horseshit anyway. So, I don't believe altruism actually exists. So you're doing it to feel good.
We're on the same page about it.
So the thing is, you're going to surprise yourself because you'll be like, oh my God, now you might adopt a dog because you spent this amazing afternoon with them. And now like your world's lit up because you've got a dog to come home to all the time. Right. And so there's going to be, and you gave, a stray a new home. So
exactly.
Yeah, there's so many more beneficial outcomes. And there's really, I mean, I don't even understand what the negative consequences would be, even if you had a motivation from a not socially acceptable position.
Right. I tend to agree.
I'm struggling to figure.
I mean,
there might be somewhere around.
She doesn't hit the example of volunteering. She just focuses on diet and exercise. Again, I think it applies. Like if whatever your motivation is for diet and exercise, again, as long as you're choosing healthy and effective.
Maybe she didn't talk about that it would, if you do it in a healthy way, maybe she's talking about crash diets. Yeah. That's the only thing I could think of would be, it might make you do things in a way.
The idea of don't do it for them, do it for you. And it's like, well, if doing it for them is what strikes a chord with you right now, post breakup,
right,
then do it for them.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing it. I mean, because, there's no way that every second you're in the gym lifting heavy weights, you're going to only be thinking about them.
It's not going to be very short lived.
And your muscle fibers don't care who you're thinking about when you're in the gym. They just care that you're in there moving heavy weights.
Same thing with your cholesterol level and everything else, right?
Your body fat, none of that cares about what your motivation is. All your body is going to be is like, oh, we're moving, we're releasing some endorphins, we're experiencing some serotonin, and we're getting healthier and not breathing as hard when we put our socks on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say leverage whatever motivation comes your way. But like you said, there's no altruism. Even if you donate, $10 million to the hospital anonymously and they build a new wing on it, you've bought $10 million of amazing feelings.
Yes.
And so it still is about you.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing
we don't want to tell ourselves some story where, well, it's only if I suffer anonymously that it's the right thing to do. It's like, no.
That's coming from
the cancer kids on that new wing, even if your name's all over it, they're still benefiting from it. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. I could argue about altruism day in and day out, but not with you because
I agree.
You agree. Well, you should.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So that's the book, Dan. I don't know exactly what we're going to do next, but you and I will certainly decide by next week, and we'll be back with a fresh episode on another book. One of the things, Dating Essentials for Men Part 2 is on our list. We want to talk about that. We want to spend a little bit of time talking about the male loneliness epidemic through reality, and a couple other topics that I'd like to get into, but you and I will have a talk this week within the next couple of days about which one we want to settle on. And we will also, at some point, I'm going to open up an event for our listeners in the Central Florida area where if they want to get together and hang out with us, they can. So you and I are going to talk about what that looks like logistically, and we'll put out a date and a place with plenty of notice where people could just show up
and buy us dinner. Yeah. That sounds good.
Rub elbows with us. So, all right, Dan, thanks very much. We'll talk to you next time. Overall, I slightly recommend the book. more than I recommend staying away from it.
All right. That's
51% for Mel.
3.1 stars. All right.
Exactly.
All right.
All right, take it easy.
All right. Have a good one.
Thanks so much for listening to the entire episode. Dan and I certainly do appreciate it. Hit mindfullymasculine.com if you want to check out our audio episodes, video episodes, and anything else we feel like sharing. And next week we will be back with a new series on a new topic. So tune in and see what we decide to go with. Talk to you next time.